Module 29 of the Series 65-66 class, brought to you by Series 7 Specialists. We appreciate the chance to help you out. We hope that you're getting a lot out of this, and be sure to tell folks about it, especially your training department, your licensing officers, other folks who may benefit from it, folks at different firms. Just get the word out. If you know somebody else who went to work for a competing firm or someone else there in your office, let them know. That really does help us out a lot. So again, we hope that you're getting a lot out of this. When we left off last time, we were on page 45, and we just wrapped up with pension plans. And let's go ahead and talk about the other retirement plans, including 401ks, which are salary reduction plans, possible employer contributions. The participant is always fully vested in their own money. The employer can set up a vesting schedule over which time the money that they contribute becomes that of the employees. You also have a Roth 401k with after-tax contributions, just like you have with a Roth IRA, tax-free withdrawals, just like you had with a Roth IRA. The employer can contribute into a regular 401k. The required minimum distributions, though, just like the IRAs, the Roth IRAs, they're not required. A 403B, that B, okay, that stands for bus, like a school bus. This is for public school employees or employees of nonprofit organizations. The rules are extremely comparable to a 401k. A 404C, what that is that's a self-directed option that's incorporated into these plans. Now, the thing about it is that an administrator of a retirement plan has a fiduciary responsibility, and as such opens himself or herself up to quite a bit of liability, because they need to be sure that they've done the prudent thing for their employees, their participants in the plan. Well, if there's a self-directed option that meets certain requirements, then to a certain degree that will mitigate the plan administrator's fiduciary responsibility, because what the administrator is able to do is to say, look, I give you these choices, and it's a fairly broad range of choices, that you can make your own decision. And what I've done is to make sure that the choices that you're given are very prudent and that you can choose from those. So therefore, if you choose poorly, I've done my part. I've made them available to you. The 404C, it's cheesy, but the way that I remember this, if I could only foresee the effects of fiduciary responsibility, then I would have put in some self-directed options. Mitigate that fiduciary responsibility. ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, basically does not allow for discrimination among employees. And here we're talking about highly paid versus lower paid employees. A plan, in order to be tax qualified, has to basically be open and allow for participation by all employees. Administrators do become fiduciaries. As fiduciaries, they're governed by the prudent investor rules, which would include the non-use of margin accounts, speculative transactions, speculative securities, speculative investments in general. Arm's length transactions, if there are any that are dealt with, could be interpreted as self-dealing, they have to be done as if they were just independent third party for the benefit of the participants only. U.S. gold coins are okay, but most other collectibles are not okay. All right, so you can have U.S. gold coins. Withdrawals from retirement plans are taxed as ordinary income upon the withdrawal, except for the Roth. And if pre-tax money is put in, then the taxable money is withdrawn first. Let's face it, the IRS makes rules to their own benefit, okay, not to us. And so they're not going to wait. If we put in pre-tax and after-tax money, all right, they're not going to wait until we deplete our after-tax money before they start getting their paycheck. So that pre-tax money is going to come out first. Therefore, it's going to be taxable when it's withdrawn. One other thing that you may possibly see on these Anytime that the question gives you someone's age and a number of years, figure out how old they are today. All right? That's what the question is all about. So Bob is 45 years old, and he does this with a variable annuity, with a retirement plan. 10 years later, he does something else and takes some money out. What's that question all about? Did you know that if Bob is 55 and he takes money out of a retirement plan, that he's going to have a 10% tax penalty? That's what that question is asking. So let's rephrase it. When Bob was 45 years old, he did thus and so. 10 years later, when he was 55 years old, yeah, do that math. It's very important. All right, so anyway, withdrawals, like I said, talked about those. Education plans, we have Coverdell plans, that $2,000 per child per year. It's tax-free if it's used for college or for educational purposes. And then 529 plans are state-by-state plans that states sponsor them, and the terms vary from state to state. Therefore, you just need to know the general overall level. You're limited by the gift tax limit, but you can put in 5 years worth all at once. What happens though is that you're shut down for the other 4 years. So like it's not like you can put in 5 at a time and then 5 at a time the next 5 well, the kid's only 3, you know, that's 15 years before he turns 18. 5 and then you're shut down for 4. 5 you're shut down for 4 more. Okay? And then it's tax-free if it's used for education expenses upon withdrawals. There are some other requirements or characteristics of it. Not going to see them on this test, all right? Then non-qualified plans, that's deferred comp plans, all right? The golden handcuffs that people talk about. But the employee, in order for the thing to work, the employee has to be at risk, so that if the company goes belly up, the employee's out of luck. Otherwise, there's no deferral to it. There's no IRS approval that's required. If you want to include this set of people, not include that set of people, it's quite okay. You can do that, okay? If it is funded, then those assets have to be attachable by the creditors of the corporation, therefore putting the employee at risk. Okay? You have funded and unfunded, but like I say, if it is funded, it has to be attachable. And so now we go to a section on economics and analysis. And just some of the terminology here. Again, just like you didn't need to be a quantitative analyst, you don't need to be an economist, but you do need to be familiar with the terms. You do need to be familiar with the way that those terms affect the marketplaces and the way that they affect investments. So inflation is our first one. It's a steady rise in the prices of goods and services. It's caused by increased money supply. There's more money chasing the same or fewer goods, and so therefore the price, the demand for that, is going to be pushed up. What causes an increased money supply? Increased government spending. Increased government spending. When they build a road, the government has to hire folks to put down the blacktop, you know, to put down that all the stuff that they do, and that's going to be money that gets into the economy. So that's going to increase the money supply if the government spends more than they did. Lower tax rates. What happens? I get X number of dollars and the government takes a third of it away from me. If all of a sudden they're just taking 25 cents on the dollar instead of 33, hey, I've got 8.5 cents more cents to spend. So that's going to increase the money supply. And then increased debt. Because what happens is that debt actually is one of the biggest ways to drive the aggregate money supply. Because what we're doing is that we're actually creating new money in the economy when we issue debt. And then wages increase faster than productivity. That's going to be another thing that's going to cause inflation and increase money supply. We get more money out there in the pockets of the public. The Consumer Price Index, the CPI, is going to be the most important measure of that, and it's used to determine constant dollars for gross domestic product purposes. If we didn't take inflation out, then our gross domestic product would, it'd be going sky high. But the thing about it is that about half of that would be inflation. Well, I don't know exactly what the percentage is, but you get the idea. A lot of it would just be inflated dollars, wouldn't really mean anything. what is our gross domestic product and the growth in it actually supposed to measure? The actual growth in our capacity to produce and consume. Okay? So anyway, we're going to use constant dollars for that. Take out the CPI. Deflation is the mirror image. It's a steady decrease in prices for goods and services. It's caused by a decreased money supply. Flip them upside down. If you have lower government spending, then fewer folks are going to be working on the road. Fewer folks are going to be getting paychecks. Going to have less money. If you have higher tax rates, more of it's going to go to DC, to your state capital. Less of it's going to be in your pocket to be spent. If you have decreased debt, you're creating less money through the issuance of debt. And if your productivity is increasing faster than your wages, then you're going to have more stuff with, at best, the same number. In fact, probably fewer dollars to buy them. And so increased supply is going to cause a drop in prices. Now you've got yield curves, all right? Yield curves, one of the things that was, sometimes I get carried away in getting very precise, and it was very liberating to realize yield curves don't have to curve, okay? You can just draw them straight as a string. It still gets the idea across. So anyway, you have a normal, an inverted, and a flat yield curve. Now, let's just think about this, okay? Let me borrow $1,000 from you, and I'll pay you back in 3 days because I have, and here's my paperwork on it, that I have some money that's going to be coming in 3 days. Let me borrow that money from you. Or, let me borrow $1,000 from you. I'll pay that back in 5 years. Now, which one has the higher risk? Man, I don't know about you. With me, a lot of stuff can happen in 5 years. I would say the longer term has the higher risk. When it has higher risk, then what are you going to want? Higher return, right? Measured by the interest rate. So just plot that out. And basically, there you go. That's normal. Absolutely normal. Because I'll have to get paid for this short maturity with a low risk. I'll settle for a lower interest rate. But as I go out further and further in maturity, I'm going to have to go up in my interest rate. That's normal. Absolutely normal. Inverted means backwards. Let's draw it backwards, okay? We'll label this one as normal. But if we're inverted, we're upside down. So there's an inverted curve. What that indicates is that the Federal Reserve Board has been pursuing a tight money policy. And Federal Reserve Board, they tweak interest rates with very, very short term, overnight, 1 day, 2 day, 5 days is a long time out for the Federal Reserve Board, okay? So Federal Reserve Board has been pushing a tight money policy. They've been pushing up interest rates, and when they push, then what goes up? The short rates go up. Okay? The marketplace is saying by the time we get out here, those rates are going to be lower, and so therefore all the interest rates are probably going to be coming down over time. We're probably going to see interest rates in general sagging down. Okay? And then you have a flat curve, which is kind of transitional. It just doesn't go from one to the other just overnight. So you have to go through a flat curve, which is, like I said, just there's very little benefit from going way long term. Moderately tight money policy. Probably the Fed is loosening, but they're not pursuing that easy money or loose money that they are when you have a normal yield curve. All right, so those are the three yield curves that we have. Normal, inverted, and flat. So let's see, the Fed has, with normal or loose, or has easy money policies. That's a very good probability for something you'll need to know. Inverted, Fed tightens by raising rates, and generally indicates that the rates are going to be coming down over time. Flat, like I say, transitional. Economic measurements and indicators, the gross domestic product. Basically what we do is that we just build a fence around the country. We put a little tower up on top, give somebody a clipboard, they look and they count everything that we do that has economic importance inside that fence over the course of a year. All the goods and services produced by labor and property within the United States in a year. You have economic indicators. Which way is the economy going to go? Well, if we knew that, man, that'd be huge. There are certain things that we can look at because they'll start to change before or at the same time, or they'll follow up a change in economic direction. And so you have leading, coincident, and lagging indicators. And so the leading indicators, let's go ahead and start with those, okay? They change before the economy turns. The first one is investor anticipation. Okay? People don't buy stocks based on what the stock is doing today. They buy stocks based on what they think the stock is going to be doing 6-8 months from now. Well, what's going to be one of the things that affects the price of a stock? Well, how good an economy do they have to work in? If it's going to be a good economy, then that stock price is more likely to rise, and it'll do so ahead of the economy, the actual turn in the economy. The next one is fuel. If you got the fastest car on the block, but it's got an empty gas tank, it's not going to go anyplace. Money is the fuel. So M2 money supply, that 2-day money, what do you have in currency, in your demand deposits, and what do you have in savings in the bank? What's readily, easily available to get to. If there's fuel, then that's it. It's there. That's a leading economic indicator. And then a willingness to burn the fuel. If you never turn the key, if you never light the match, the fuel's never going to burn. And so it's never going to go anywhere. You can have all the money in the world, but if nobody wants to spend it, big deal. So investor consumer confidence. How willing are they to part with that money because they know they feel like anyway, there's going to be more money coming in to replace it. That's going to be a leading indicator. And then there are certain, what I call blue collar factors. All right, these are things that your folks who work seasonal work, who work in industries where employment goes up and it goes down and what have you. Man, they're the ones that when they start to go to work, that's going to be an indicator that the economy is turning. So, like for instance, average manufacturing work week. See, we're going to work Fred, and we're going to work him overtime before we call his cousin Bob to come to work. So, like I say, the average work week, it's going to extend out before we actually start hiring more people. The initial unemployment claims. Fred himself is on the bubble. But the thing is, now they're not talking about layoffs. Now they're talking about, having him going ahead and working that full 40 hours and maybe even 45. So he's not there's nobody on the bubble that's filing unemployment claims anymore. That's going to lead the economy. New orders for consumer goods. You got to get the shelves full before you can sell the stuff. All right. So you've got to get the orders before you produce. And once you start to produce, then what do you have to do? You have to hire people, and what do you have to do? Then pay people. Okay. But all those orders will be a leading indicator. Orders for plant and equipment. You've got to decide you're going to build a plant and put in the order with the general contractor before you clear the site, bring out the concrete, and Fred's a concrete finisher. Got to get that order in first. Same thing with new housing permits. You got to get the permit before you call Bob out to the site because Bob's a framer. Okay? Those permits will lead the economy. And durable goods orders, pretty much the same thing. Okay? What's everybody doing right now when the economy's just in the pit? They're repairing that refrigerator. They're putting new shock absorbers on their car. But what are they going to do, though, once they feel like the economy is starting to turn? Okay, then they're going to start buying more of those durable goods. All right. And then the speed of vendor deliveries. That's going to lead the economy because just like we decide, it looks like things are starting to shape up. Maybe we'd better, start doing having Fred work that extra 5 hours. Okay, they're doing the same thing across town and across the country. Therefore, this producer of certain goods that we use in manufacturing, they use the same stuff, so do they over there across the country, and so therefore the lead times have to extend out. And sensitive material prices, man, I'll tell you what, on that copper, there's been no price elasticity. Okay, we had no flexibility. Now that demand's starting to come up, so now we can actually raise our prices some. All those are going to lead the economy. Now, things that happen at the same time, the coincident indicators, what happens? Bob, Fred's cousin, he's been after his boss to hire Bob for ages. What happens when the economy is in gear and in doing what it is? Well, let's look at it. Industrial production. Because what? They decide time to hire Bob. And Bob's a good worker, and he produces. So industrial production in the aggregate goes up. Personal income. What does Bob get on Friday? A paycheck. And oh, by the way, is that being productive? Absolutely. Therefore, it's going to be measured in the gross domestic product. So, in fact, that's the classic case of coincident indicators, because that's really how we measure it. And then hours worked. Because again, now instead of just 5 hours, maybe 9 hours because we work a half day Saturday for Fred, now we've got another 40 hours that we're working Bob. They said, so again, in the aggregate, the number of hours of work is going up. And then lagging indicators. This happens after the economy has already made its move, probably starting on in the other direction. Corporate profits. Accountants simply cannot report the future. All they can do is to report the past. And so if they're reporting corporate profits, it's from last quarter, last year. That's history. That's come, that's gone. The economy's already moved on to either better or worse, but it's moved on. Corporate profits are going to be lagging indicators. Personal debt to income. What did Bob do? Okay. Bob went out and he bought himself a new pickup truck. And so what happened? He's got a certain amount of debt, and he's got a certain amount of income, and that looks good, and so they sell him the truck. But now the economy has turned and it's gone down, and it just blows the heck out of his income, but what's still there? The debt. So like I say, that's a lagging indicator. But, you know, they kept him on as long as they possibly could. And then you've got duration of unemployment, which lags, and then inventories as well. And for that same reason, okay? Because the thing about it is that we kept Bob on as long as we could. And what did we do while Bob was there? He was producing, and we just stuck the stuff on the shelf. And we took our lead times for our customers down from 6 to 8 weeks, down to 2 to 4 weeks, down to 1 week to off the shelf to, Bob, we got to let you go. I mean, the economy's already turned. Okay. And then you have balance of payments. Generally speaking, you know, you have to pay for what it is that you get. So we typically are going to import more than we export. Therefore, typically we in the United States will have a deficit. And the business cycle, you'll have an expansion, peak, contraction, and those contractions then can be considered recessions or depressions. You'll need to know this cycle. Okay? What we want to see is that we want to see the economy expanding and then shallow and as short as we can. And then keeping on doing that. This is an expansion, but we hit a peak at some time. Then we enter into a contraction, followed by a trough, which is followed then by expansion, a peak, contraction, a trough, etc. It just keeps on going. Now the thing about it is that what does this look like? If this is, okay, if it's fairly short, fairly shallow, then it's a recession. If it's fairly long and extended, then it's going to be a depression. So 6 months of contracting gross domestic product and lower stock prices, that's a recession. Now, depression is where you've got 6 quarters or 18 months. So that's the easy way to remember it for me. Rather than remembering months on both of them, I remember 6 and 6. The 6 months is a recession, but 6 quarters, and it's easy to do the math, okay? That's going to be a depression. So anyway, it's about time for a break. Let's go ahead and take a break. We'll come back then, finish up with this, and get into tax considerations in the next module.